Okay, deep breath, everybody. And we're going to begin our morning one more time with an expression of gratefulness and thanks and song, Ozi v'zimratya vayahili lishua. Here we go. Ozi v'zimratya vayahili lishua. Ozi v'zimratya vayahili lishua.
Good morning, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for hanging with us while we figured out our exciting technological surprise this morning. It's always fun to have a little moment of what the heck is happening. It is a pleasure to be praying with all of you this morning. We are in this period of this Shabbats of consolation, which we do after Tisha B'Av. So those of you that prayed with us last week, you know that we made a big transition from these moments of sadness that we had been in earlier in the summer as we were preparing to remember some of the destruction that has been with our people in the past. And now we're in moments of happiness as we come out of those. And the summer is weird, because we have these moments, we have these big periods of time, right? And we're getting ready, though I'm careful to say this in front of Cantor Sachs. It's almost Elul, which is the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah. So we have to be careful because it makes her breathe fast. It's almost Elul. And so we're in these big chunks of time. We were sad, now we're happy, soon we'll be contemplative. And so we do this in these big time periods. And so right now we're in this period of just sort of taking it in and being happy and being joyous and being comforted by the fact that we're all together and that we are, we look around, we see the beautiful sky above us, we see the beautiful trees outside, and we're just comforted. Even though our world is not what it's quite supposed to be, we feel comforted. And so with that, we take this moment to find the joy, to find the gratitude, and to find the holiness and sacredness in our space. So take this moment to look around you, this place that is not necessarily a holy place the rest of the week. Make it holy for you in this moment as we join together in our first words of prayer together. I enter this sacred space to voice the longings of my heart in prayer. Read with me. In sacred company, I offer my love to the Holy One. I devote myself this morning to psalm and song, study and prayer. May my heart be lifted, may my thoughts be deepened, and may my soul, like the eagle, soar.
משכנותיך ישראל, מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, ואני ברוב חסדך אבוא ביתך, אשתחווה לך קודשך ביראתך, מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, אדוני אהבתי ביום ביתך, ומקום משכן כבודך, משכן כבודך, ואני אשתחווה לך, אברך לפני אדוני, עושי מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך, מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, מה טוב, מה טוב, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, משכנותיך
And we begin this practice of finding gratitude this morning, of warming up our bodies and souls and spirits in an effort to find all of these little moments to be grateful for, with the gratitude for our physical selves. My body is a mystery, so strong, so fragile. It can suffer great pain, endure to reach triumph, but a small moment can bring collapse and death. We read together. My body is a mystery, a gift of intricacy and beauty, powerful, endowed with the ability to take light and air and food and make them into energy and action. What then is my life? How then will I use this gift? I will thank you for your kindness and abundance. I will treasure the moments of strength and vigor. I will surrender to moments of weakness and distress. God, who provides sustenance and health, you are the source of life. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously.
And now that we've given thanks for our physical selves, we will give thanks for our spiritual selves, for the piece of us that hopefully feels like each day we open up like that beautiful sunflower on the screen, looking out to the world to bring in the new day. Neshama, neshama, time to share our personal blessings. So write them into the comments there for what are we grateful on this Shabbat morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. I'm grateful for technology that works most of the time. But let us know, what are you thinking about this morning? And together we say, Amen. Elohai, Elohai. Neshama, Neshama. Shenatatavi, Shenatatavi. Tehorai, Tehorai. Elohai, Elohai.
And so we have said thank you for our physical selves, thank you for our spiritual selves, and now we have a moment of gratitude for our intellectual selves, for our brains, for the learning that we have the capacity to do, and the ways that we think and engage with the world in our minds. And so we are going to say the blessing before we get into our study of Musar. We say together, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot and commands us to engage with the words of Torah. And so we are on teaching 3 of compassion. And fascinatingly, this is just a piece of text from the book of Leviticus. And here's what it says. If one of your countrymen becomes poor and is unable to support himself among you, help him as you would an alien or a temporary resident, so he can continue to live among you. This is a fascinating text. There's a lot of things here. So let's clarify some of our terms first. What do we mean by alien? Not extraterrestrial. It turns out we are not obligated by Torah law to support those who are not of planet Earth, though I think perhaps one could extrapolate. But an alien means someone who is a stranger to us. The word in Hebrew is ger. And the Hebrew for the second part of this is help him as you would, ger v'toshav. And the idea there is that we have all kinds of people that walk among us that perhaps don't have the same access to livelihood as we do. And so the idea of a temporary resident or a sojourner, a traveler, that's the idea of somebody who doesn't permanently live near you, but who is just making their way by you. And then the word alien or a stranger, someone who we don't know, someone who is not even a temporary resident of the land in which we live, but is a total stranger to us. Now, let's take the sentence apart. We see here an expectation that has already been made clear to us that one of these strangers or these sojourners, of course we would help them. What this passage is teaching us is that if one of our countrymen, our neighbor, our familiar countrymen becomes poor and is unable to support themselves among us, we would help them just like we would help someone who was a stranger or who was just passing by, so that that person could continue to live amongst you. So what is fascinating about this? 1, the knowledge that we have that of course we would help the stranger. 2, fascinating that we have to be told explicitly that we help our friend or our neighbor just as we would help the stranger. That it's actually easier in this text, it seems, to conceive of helping the stranger than it is of helping our neighbor. And so the idea here, I think, behind this lesson of compassion is that it actually doesn't matter who the person in need is. Stranger, temporary resident, friend, neighbor, brother, we help them all. If someone is poor and unable to support themselves, we take them in and we support them so that they can continue to live amongst us. The compassion there is not just the help, but it is the help that we are giving to them regardless of what role they play in the permanence of our lives, whether they are a person we see every day or whether they're a person we'll never see again. And so we say together our phrase and our practice. Feel free to read with me. Our phrase is, care for the other, we are one. And our practice, identify a person or people with whom there is a heaviness in your relationship, then act toward them in a way that reaches beyond what is required in order to relieve them of their burden. And that makes me think that perhaps it's easier to help someone who's a stranger than someone that you have to see all the time, someone who might feel embarrassed or shameful because you know them and all of a sudden they need support in a way that they didn't anticipate. And we will read together our closing prayer of this section. We say, Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel.
And now that we have combined all of our gratitude for our physical selves, for our spiritual self, and for our intellectual selves, we take all of that gratitude into one word, hallelujah. Praise God over and over again with all of our bodies, with all of our minds, with all of our hearts, and with all of our instruments that we can imagine using to make this great noise of praise. Psalm 150, hallelujah. now we take a moment to rise as we are able, physically or spiritually, as we prepare for Baruch. Deep breath. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai! In wisdom you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer hameorot. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke, and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Praised are you, Adonai, who chooses your people, Israel, in love.
Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one, and we will know that you are one. Shema, Shema You may be seated and we chant together. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam b'shivtecha me'veitecha ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
The good in us will win over all the wickedness. Over all the wrongs we have done, we will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed. And then we will laugh and sing, and the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. We read together. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth, from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to that morning throng. Rock of Israel, Rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised. Our Redeemer, Adonai Tsevaot is your name. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We rise now physically or spiritually as we prepare for tefillah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol V'zocher chastei avot ve'imor U'mivi geula livnei v'neihem Leman shemo be'ava Melech ozer U'moshia u'magin Baruch atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia Morid atah Mechalkel chayim bechesed Mechayei hakol merachamim rabim Somech noflim verofeh cholim Umatir asurim Umekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha ba'al gevurot Umido melach Melech memir umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'emanat al hachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh hakol Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marum Hakatuv היה נביאך וקרא לזה ואמר קדוש לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גורלך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גורלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם, לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We take a moment now for silent prayer, for the prayers that are in our hearts and minds, and we take a moment to pray.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week, we will be reading from Parashat Eikev, and we're going to hear Steve Katz chant beautifully for us in just a moment. But before we get there, I just wanted to take just a few minutes to talk a little bit about some of what we find in this parsha. You know, we've mentioned a couple times now that Deuteronomy is really a review. The entirety of the book is a review of everything that has happened between Exodus and Numbers. It is Moses's last gasp, last great chance to influence the people, to speak to them, and to help them understand what has been the point of the journey. It is an amazing moment of often intertextuality, where Moses is interpreting in real time Torah material that happened just a few parshiot ago, or just a couple of months before. And this week in Parashat Eikev, we come to the end of Moses's second great oration. So in Deuteronomy, there are actually three orations that Moses gives throughout the book. And you can divide them into 3 sections or 5 sections, depending on how you look at it. But everyone agrees that Parashat Eikev ends number 2, no matter how many more you think are coming. And so it gives us an opportunity to actually review the microcosm of the review that Moses is given. And so what do we find here? What is one of the lessons that we learn when we look at this oration, this speech in its totality? So let's hyper-focus on our Parsha for a second. Parashat Eikev contains many famous verses, some of which you heard Rabbi Black talk about last night, and some of which Rabbi Hyatt taught in Torah study this morning. There is one verse in Deuteronomy 8:3 that says, "A human being does not live on bread alone." Now you may recognize that verse because in both the Jewish and Christian context, it is a verse that is used frequently to talk about the need for spiritual development, that bread becomes kind of a religious formality or a general religious affiliation, and that what the Torah seems to be teaching us here is that you have to do more. There's more growth there. It's actually also a phrase that, because it comes from the Bible, is used all over the place, on t-shirts and in a ton of cookbooks. If you have any, many of them are titled "A Human Being Does Not Live on Bread Alone," and then you get all kinds of other super fun recipes for things that I can't possibly do in my own kitchen. But the tricky part about this verse is that the first phrase does seem to imply that. And yet, in its actual context, that phrase, where living on the actual sustenance that we need to continue, is actually being highlighted rather than kind of devalued. That the point is that God taught us in our wilderness journey that your needs can be met by whatever means are necessary, whatever means are out there. Not to say that this physical need, this understanding of bread as basic and connected to our bodies, not to denounce it, not to say that that's not sufficient, but that it can be sufficient if we need it to be, but that there can also be more. And that's where it gets interesting, because the rest of Parashat Eikev has a ton of verses that emphasize our physical selves, the nature of what we need to actually exist physically. And we're going to come back to the triad that we talk a lot about in our services, the physical, the spiritual, and the intellectual, and how it plays in here at the end. But just for a second, I wanted to review with you the many, many times that Eikev talks about our own physical bodies. So there are a plethora of verses in Deuteronomy 7:13. It talks about God is going to bless us, blessing our fertility. It talks a lot, many times, about how the wondrous acts that we saw with our eyes. It talks about our hunger, that God gave us manna to eat. And in that same phrase, it also emphasizes that the way God showed love is that there was clothes that we had in the desert that did not wear out, nor did our feet swell while walking through the desert for 40 years. Now, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. But in that one verse, we've got hunger and clothes and feet, all emphasizing this core physical nature. It also talks about building houses, and also has a verse in Deuteronomy 11, every spot on which your foot treads shall be yours. So lots and lots of using our physical attributes as metaphor and literally as a way to think about how God cares for us and emphasizing how important it is. Interestingly, Moses also does a little bit of a retell of the golden calf story in this portion. And for another time, we can talk about how Moses has decided to understand and create some revisionist history around the golden calf. But even in that story, even in the retelling of that essential story, he adds details in that all have to do with our physicality. He says, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. That we know. But then he adds, eating no bread and drinking no water. And then when he talks about coming down, thereupon I gripped 2 tablets and flung them away with both my hands, smashing them. That is a really graphic description of what was happening, which does not match what happens in Exodus. And then he comes to the end of the story and he says, I took the tablets and I broke them into little bits and ground them thoroughly and threw its dust into the brook that comes down from the mountain. So just like so much imagery of hands and grinding over and over and over again. Okay. So how does this connect to what we glean? Well, for a long time, our tradition has indeed emphasized the importance of the physical. We are not a tradition that says discard our physical selves and concentrate only on the soul. There are moments where we emphasize one or the other, but there is always been an understanding of the totality of the connection between those two. And the Talmud in general has a ton of teachings about why it's important to care about our physical selves and the need to cultivate and care for our bodies in order to develop a more fulfilled life. So just a couple of examples. There's a really funny quote from Rabbi Avdimi from Haifa. And he says, before a person eats and drinks, he has 2 hearts, meaning his heart is unsettled because he is distracted by hunger. But after he eats and drinks, he has only 1 heart, meaning that at that moment, we can actually focus because our physical needs have been met. We can turn to focus on our intellectual growth and on our spiritual growth. And then in Sanhedrin, we have this very interesting interpretation where it says that in Malachi, in the book of Malachi, which is a prophetic book, Malachi says, the day is coming, it will burn like a furnace, and all the arrogant and all who do wickedly shall be straw. And the day that is coming shall burn them up, and it will leave them neither root nor branch. Picking up on that last phrase, neither root nor branch, the Talmud says that actually what that means is that the root is our soul, but the branches are our body. And so while our soul grounds us, it is actually our physical selves that reach out into the world and create contact and meaning for others. So again, lots and lots of emphasis in our tradition on the importance of the physical. So why does this matter? And how does this connect to Moses' second oration? And a little bit of the experience that we are all having right now. Well, Moses' second oration in the book of Deuteronomy contains last week's portion and this week's portion. That's it. And while that may seem small, for those of you who remember, last week's portion had the 10 Commandments and the Shema. That's a lot to contain in one portion and then connect it with this teaching also. But if we dissect these three focuses, what we end up with is a strong intellectual focus around the Ten Commandments, a strong spiritual focus around the Shema, and a strong physical focus in Eikev. We must have all three. Eikev completes the triad. It's not enough, and it's not possible to just focus on the heady intellectual nature of the Ten Commandments and the spiritual connection we feel with the concept of God as one that we get in the Shema. Those are important and beautiful, but unless we are paying attention to our physical selves, unless we grant that physicality is crucial, we will not be able to focus on the other two. And so that brings me to right now. We are in a moment where it is more difficult to express our religious connection, our connection to our community physically. We are not here physically together. We are here with you. We are talking right to you, but I am not sitting next to you. And there is some loss there, and we recognize that. And we are working on lots of different ways to compensate for that and to create other and additional opportunities to help us continue our community connection despite that lack of physical closeness. And the fact that we're not next to you is in and of itself an act of care for our physical selves. We are working constantly on what is safe and how we take care of our bodies in order to take care of our souls and our minds. And so I hope for each of you that you know that your choices that you are making in this time, your choices to prioritize your physical well-being is absolutely a spiritual choice. It is a choice that combines these three things into a holy triad, into a holy expression of the totality of your faith. That it is important to listen to what your body needs so that you can continue to grow spiritually and intellectually and continue to be a truly strong and crucial member of our congregation. And so with that, I say Shabbat Shalom. We are going to transition into Torah service right now. And it is my great pleasure to introduce the family of Matthew Gurdon, who is becoming bar mitzvah later this evening in a small ceremony. So I'm going to introduce Lisa Foreman and Bill Gurdon and Matthew, who are going to do the blessing before the Torah. And then Steve Katz will be reading our Torah portion from Eikev, and Amy Pell, who is a member of our board of trustees, is going to be reading the translation. So here we go.
Baruch hu Adonai Hamvarak, Baruch Adonai Hamvarak Le'olam. Baruch hu Adonai Hamvarak, Baruch Adonai Hamvarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ve'ata Yisrael, ma Adonai Elohecha, shoel me'imach, ki im liyirah, et Adonai Elohecha, l'lechet b'chol derachav, v'la'avod oto, v'la'avod et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, lishmor et mitzvot Adonai v'et kukotav asher anochi mitzavecha hayom l'tov lach. Hein l'Adonai Elohecha hashamayim u'shemei hashamayim ha'aretz v'chol asher ba. Rak bavotecha chashak Adonai lava otam vayivchar b'zara machareihem bachem mikol ha'amim kayom hazeh umaltem et orlat levavchem v'or bechem lo takshu od ki Adonai Elohechem hu Elohei ha'Elohim v'Adonai ha'Adonim ha'el hagadol hagibor v'hanora asher lo yisafanim lo yikach shochad oseh mishpat yatom ve'almana ve'ohev ger lotet lo lechem v'simla v'avtem et hager ki gerim heitem beretz Mitzrayim et Adonai Elohecha tira oto tavod uva otidbak uvishmo tishaveya hu tehilatacha v'hu Elohecha asher asa itcha et hagadolot v'et hanorot ha'ele asher ra'u einecha b'shivim nefesh yardu avotecha Mitzrayma v'ata samacha Adonai Elohecha k'chovei hashamayim la'rov.
And now, O Israel, what does the Eternal your God demand of you? Only this, to revere the Eternal your God, to walk only in divine paths, to love and to serve the Eternal your God with all your heart and soul, keeping the Eternal's commandments and laws, which I enjoin upon you today for your good. Mark, the heavens to their uttermost reaches belong to the Eternal your God, the earth and all that is on it. Yet it is to your ancestors that the Eternal was drawn out of love for them, so that you, their lineal descendants, were chosen from among all peoples, as is now the case. Cut away, therefore, the thickening about your hearts, and stiffen your necks no more. For the Eternal your God is God supreme and Lord supreme, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You must revere the Eternal. Only your God shall you worship. To God shall you hold fast, and by God's name shall you swear. The Eternal is your glory and your God, who wrought for you those marvelous, awesome deeds that you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors went down to Egypt, 70 persons, and now the Eternal your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven.
Tzidkenu, Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Thank you to everybody for those beautiful words of Torah. Cantor Sachs, thank you so much for teaching us this morning. And to the Gurdon family, Mazel Tov, and thank you for your blessing. To Steve Katz, wonderful, beautiful Torah reading. Thank you. And Amy, always a pleasure to have you with us. And with that, and all of the holiness that we find in this act of reading Torah together, we turn now to our words of healing. And we pray certainly for the healing of all of those in our lives and in our worlds that are in need of a little bit of an extra prayer today. And so as always, we begin with these words of healing together, and then we will take a pause and share the list of names that we have in our congregation of those who are in need of healing. And of course, as we say every week, there's no difference whether it comes out of my mouth or your fingers. So feel free to type them into the comments box as we ask for names when we get there as well. And today we are praying for Zachary Hoffman, David Karner, David Lustig, Marcia Richter, Paul Kamensky, Dr. Catherine Carey McCallie, Natalie Mosier, Corey Franklin, Margaret Glubach, Bob Connolly, Lori Markman, Jeff Cohn, Jennifer Butler Poole, David Goldenberg, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stuart Myers, Shanti Hazan, Robert Tucker, Jennifer Brynan, Lynn Pollitt, Sarah Lynn McIntyre, David Bershoff, Lynn McLaughlin Cromar, Cynthia Friedland, Dana Huss, Harold Gluscoder, Betsy Appel, Louis Karsh, Brian Ogaz, Robin Huss, Zell Friednash, and Sani Talpers. And we ask you to type in any other names of those that you know that are in need of healing, those for whom we can pray together as we say these words, Baruch atah Adonai, Makor HaRefuah, blessed are you, Adonai, source of all healing.
It's the song of the dreamer. From a dark place it grows, like a flower in the desert, the oasis of our souls. Come back where we belong. You hear our longing cries. Our mouths, our lips are filled with song. You can see our tear-filled eyes. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. We continue now with Aleinu as we rise, maybe physically and spiritually, as we head toward the conclusion of our service. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo asanu כשלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As we reach this moment of memory of the mourner's cottage, we begin with these traditional words that we say at the beginning of this moment. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, to the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss and of life and death. And as we begin to read our list of those that we are remembering, there are two people that I want to mention to you that are on our list. Likely nobody that you had the opportunity to come into contact with, but two great teachers of our tradition. This week we lost Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, who was an enormous contributor to the world of rabbinic study, and made so much of the Talmud and the writings of our rabbis accessible to many of us. And so I know that I'm very grateful to him for all of his work over his lifetime and his brilliance. We also lost this week a teacher and a rabbi of mine, Rabbi Shaya Kalimnik. He's from New York, and he was a rabbi who was an Orthodox rabbi his whole life, and yet he participated really heavily in BBYO, in a pluralistic youth group. And he taught me what it meant to be a part of a community, and to be pluralistic, and to love people that are different from you, and what the power of that was. And so in their memories, we read this list, and so much of the prayer that we have, I think the two of them represent the accessibility of our community and of Jewish learning beyond those who might have been born ready to do it, and ready to learn and ready to study. And so great men and great loss. We also remember one more name of someone that we have lost in this last week, Marion Goldman. And we add to that list those that we have lost in the last 30 days. Albert Cordova, Sally Gass, Ruth Kolker, Alan Levin, Leona Rabson, and Claire Sissenwine. And as always, we add those names to our Kaddish list, to those who have been gone for a year, for many years, but for whom this Shabbat marks the anniversary of their passing. Helen E. Alexander, Ellen Bogan Allen, Marvin V. Apple, Hattie S. Balaban, Sadie R. Bernstein, Morris H. Block, Rose Bronstein, Frida Ehrlich Brown, Bella L. Cohn, Dave Cook, Jack Dillon, Florence G. Emanuel, Charles S. Flax, Martin J. Friedman, Jeanette F. Goldstone, Julia Gross, Joseph Halperin, Bessie Hayton, Alex Hayton, Marvin H. Ellerstein, Stephen C. Herman, Joseph David Isco, Pauline Kessler, Albert R. Klein, Ed Levy, Jack C. Levy, Arthur Lorber, S. Morris Lubo, Bernice Francis Metzger, David Michael, Lillian Winter Michelson, Daisy G. Ottenheimner, Lieutenant Alvin L. Rosenbaum, Rose Lee Rosenberg, Sally B. Sanders, Gladys Sobel Samuelson, Isidore J. Shore, Leo M. Simon, Marilyn Bassow Simon, Dr. Sailing Simon, Stanley Slavsky, Benjamin Stein, Mark Stryker, Edith Stein Tobin, Cindy Lee Wax, Geraldine Robbins Weil, Miriam Gloria Weinstock, Ray Weissenberger, Harry Wolgemuth, Janet Wanda Yabrov. And we add 10 more names, those from the city of Kolín in the former Czechoslovakia, for whom our Kolín chapel is dedicated. Rita Krausova, Vera Krausova, Josefa Steinova Lauser, Hugo Lederer, Frantiska Leviova, Misa Lowy, Marketa Lowiova, Josef Lustig, Karol Lustig, and Marie Lustigova. And any other names of those that you are remembering, continue to type into the comments box on Facebook as we stand beside you and remember all of those beloved friends and family and scholars and wise people who came before us together. And we join together in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgarash shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulealmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, B'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. And as we begin, we're continued to conclude our service this morning. We have just a few quick announcements. The first is that Shabbat concludes this evening at 7 p.m. with Steve Brodsky here on Facebook Live. Feel free to join in with him as he sings Shabbat out. And otherwise, everything we're getting pretty used to this virtual thing, and we will continue virtually through the High Holy Days. If you have questions about what that will look like, we promise more information will be coming out about all of the High Holy Day offerings and where to find them and how to make sure that you know the schedule. Just a reminder, in case you didn't see it in the e-notes, we have some new pastoral care contact information for you. We now have an email address for all of your Misha Berach or other pastoral care needs. It is care@emmanueldenver.org, and you can email the clergy team there with updates. And we also have a new emergency phone number for members who are having life cycle emergencies, and that number is available on our website. It is monitored 24 hours a day. Please don't use it unless it's an emergency, but just so that you know that is now available. So you know what, not being in our building makes us think a lot harder about how we want to make sure that we can be with you when you need us. And so we've been working hard on that. And with that, I think we're going to turn it back over to Cantor Sax for a departing song of peace.
That is right. There is a lot of, need for peace in the world right now. However you want to define what that is. Oseh shalom bimromav. May the one who makes peace grant peace to us, to all of Israel, and let us say, Amen. Oseh shalom. Call
Yehi ratzon milfanecha, may it be your will, God, that we have a week of peace, and that we each have the opportunity this week to find what sustains us. Perhaps a little bit of bread, but perhaps also all of the spiritual and the sustenance of meaning and of community and of beauty and of finding gratitude in that which we experience on a daily basis. And we ask you, God, tatzilenu l'shalom v'tatzidenu l'shalom. May our footsteps and our paths be guided by peace. And we wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.